Welcome to Mindset Mastery Moments, the podcast dedicated to helping you unlock your full potential through the power of mindset. Join Dr. Alisa Whyte, a transformative creator and multi-award-winning trailblazer, as she guides you on a journey of self-discovery and empowerment. With a background in corporate leadership and workforce development, Dr. Alisa has dedicated her career to inspiring individuals to achieve their goals and dreams. Known as the #1 mindset disruptor, she firmly believes that the key to success lies within the mind. Dr. Whyte has witnessed the incredible impact a shift in mindset can have on one's life, career, and relationships. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just beginning your journey of self-discovery, you'll find valuable lessons, inspiring stories, and practical tools to elevate your life. In each episode, Dr. Alisa engages with thought leaders, coaches, and changemakers from around the globe, exploring their journeys and the mindsets that have propelled them to success. Get ready to reframe your perspective, embrace challenges, and cultivate the mindset necessary to achieve your dreams. Now let's dive into today's episode and discover how to master your mindset for a brighter, more fulfilling future.
Hello, disruptors from all around the globe. Welcome to another empowering and enlightening episode of Mindset Mastery Moments with yours truly, Dr. Alisa Whyte. Today's conversation is one that's not just crucial, but it's also transformative for anyone in leadership. And I love to talk about entre leadership, that word that was coined and phrased by Dave Ramsey. Especially in high stakes fields of law, for example, just giving you a little hunch on what our guest focus areas. We're going to be diving into an area that's often overlooked, and that is strength in vulnerability. We know that Brené Brown has talked a lot about vulnerability the last decade, but our guest today, he definitely has another way that for me is most practical and realistic than anything else when it comes to vulnerability in leadership. Our guest today, someone who has turned adversity into a platform for change and growth, not only for himself, but for an entire legal profession. Today, I am excited to welcome our guest, Carl Shawn Watkins. Carl, we welcome you to Mindset Mastery Moments. Come on in.
Alisa, how are you?
Doing great. I'm so happy. Couldn't wait to have this conversation with you, our dear ambassador of Mindset Mastery 360 as well. I just want to share a little bit more about your work and what you do. And so Carl has been an aspiring attorney and a leadership consultant who champions the power of vulnerability within both leadership and law. What a blend, because let's just say this, no matter who you lead and where you lead, there's always laws to guide us, right? He was born and raised in Chicago's inner city. Carl Shawn has faced and overcome significant challenges. As for me, what I say, a towering strength of an African male leader in the US. He is now on the mission of revolutionizing the legal industry by advocating for vulnerability as a cornerstone for effective leadership. Carl holds a bachelor's degree in law from Rowan University and is currently pursuing his Juris Doctorate in civil law. His work focuses on guiding legal professionals, whether they are aspiring attorneys or seasoned practitioners, on the journey of self-discovery and growth through vulnerability. Carl Shawn, you are an absolute honor and pleasure, and we're so blessed and honored to have you today on the podcast. And of course, one of the leaders in our Mindset Mastery 360 global community. So, Carl, in your own words, tell us who you are and what you do.
Oh my God, I'm so humbled. I'm so humbled by that. It often amazes me. Thank you, Dr. Alisa, for having me on, just to be able to talk about some of the things that we're going to talk about today. But I call it humbling. This didn't start overnight. A lot of people see that you're in places, or you're in platforms, or you're in areas, or you're in rooms, so to speak. But there comes some intrepidation, some trials and challenges of being in those rooms and not being able to have a voice. And I just thank the pandemic, actually. I thank God first and foremost. But I think the pandemic allowed what I had been cultivating for such a long period of time in my professional and personal life to actually get an ability to be showcased. And that was that people had no other recourse with the pandemic, but to show their vulnerabilities. And I said that in essence of just my prayer from my lips to God's ears was that gave me an avenue to explore vulnerabilities throughout every single person I encountered. And it just blossomed from there. So I'm excited about it. I'm humbled about it. I'm humbled to see the way that it has changed from just the book knowledge of vulnerability, as you said, Brene Brown. And the funny thing about it, I did not know about her until the pandemic. And I know people's like, how can you not know? But she got this, she got that. I always wrote about vulnerability in my path and how I lived it. I didn't have to go study people. I didn't have to go, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's how we do research, right?
Right.
There's no knock on that, but I drew from my lived experiences, the experiences of me growing up, the experiences of strong women in my life, holding 2 and 3 jobs, going to college, taking care of, I didn't have, my dad died when I was young. So my mom had my brother and sister, and she cultivated us as I was a teen with 2 teen boys growing up in Chicago. Those kind of things I got from her and growing that. And those experiences what cultivated me to be a writer. I wrote a lot about it. I journaled a lot about it. I never considered it journaling then, but I was just telling stories of my life and the things that I experienced. And to me, that was vulnerable because I shared things that were not what you would want people to know about you. And
About
not what
you, right?
Yeah, or proud about. But that gave me the strength to say that that's who you are. And you can't change who you are. Only thing you can do is embrace it and know that there's power in you.
Yes. Oh my gosh, absolutely. And, we're going to talk about this a little bit more later, but, I was just having a conversation with one of my dear friends earlier this morning, and I was sharing about how a lot of times we talk about whether that we say women are way more emotional beings than men are. And I said, scientifically, that is not true. That scientifically, it shows that it's equally the same. And sometimes men are actually more emotional. What I do know for sure is statistically, what we have done is trained men to manage their emotions, or sometimes I would say suppress them, right? But we don't do that with females, and we allow women, female children, when they're young, she can cry and be like, "Oh, come here," and we give that, which is needed. I believe it should be given to both, and then allow a conversation for them to be vulnerable and expresses about what they feel. But for the male child, we used to say, you know what, it's okay. Dust it off, Carl. Dust it off. You'll be fine. And then if it seems like something he probably shouldn't be crying for, in our opinion, we say, what do we say? Big boys don't cry. So we teach men. So when women get in the space of leadership, we bring all the emotion, and I don't feel like, and I don't this, and we get to lash out and act up, right? But for men, you all are trained to calm that feeling or shut it down altogether and focus on the practicality. The practicality is you fell off the bike, you bruised your arm, go wash it off and get back out there. We would tell the girl, oh, you can take a rest today. The thing I'm pointing to here is for a male, and particularly, and I have no issue saying this, way I work in my platform is I have focus groups. And so for today, I'm going to probably go back and forth a little bit to the African-American male, because again, as I said, what you represent with bringing this to law, vulnerability, and being in the skin you in, because, those are our coats, that we get to wear on this earth. To bring that is a thing. It's a thing that I can only assume may have been a challenge. I'm going there. Tell us, with a male in leadership, in law, focusing on vulnerability, what does that look like?
It looks easier, I guess, from the outside looking in, and from me being through it and I walked the path and kind of like been the path blazer for it. It's easy now to talk about it, and it's easier to be consumed from others. The reason I say consumed is because we like to hear those stories of that, but we don't like it to be our stories. And this is where I had to kind of like break the mold in law.
Yeah.
Because yes, those stories are great. And I would talk to lawyers and they would say, man, I got people in my family like that. And I would flip the script right there. But what about you?
Mm.
How is this resonating with you as a
Mhm.
male? And I started this and this might be funny to say, but I started this with Caucasian attorneys.
Of
Actually,
course.
I didn't start with, because of course I didn't have a lot around that wanted to even be in these conversations. I'm just going to be honest with you. They didn't, because they had made it to plateaus and continuously to be professional in plateaus in areas where looking weak would have got them ran over, right?
Mm.
But it's something that my grandfather told me. He as I was a little kid, and he told me they can't run over anything in your mind.
Ooh, that's good.
And he used to tell me that with the essence of learning, if you learn it, it's yours, you possess it. So
That's it.
regardless of wherever you be at, so maybe you can make it applicable, it doesn't matter because it's always with you.
Right.
And I think this is where we kind of lose it as African American men. There's this, and don't get me wrong, when I'm saying this, I'm talking not at them, I'm talking with them and
With
through
them,
them
because
and being in it.
it's us. Yeah.
It's us, because sometimes we look at that and that is our power, us being that, not the male that they painted as angry black man,
Right.
but the black kings that came from our country and
Yeah.
came from who sat in places of knowledge,
Right.
understanding, building things as pyramids and things of those today without the trigonometry numbers and all of that they claim to have possessed today. But you look at those things that we aren't empowered by those because we don't share those with each other. We don't share those as reminders.
Right.
I have a son and he's 24 now, and all through life, I made it a purpose of not separating the races at all, because we all got to live together. But what I said to him is that you are nowhere, no how inferior to anyone ever that's walked this planet, even though you may not be substantially knowledgeable as one that you come across. You're not inferior because you don't know that.
Right.
And I coached that into him. He was actually my first coaching client, right?
Perfect. You know what? Very good perspective. I love that.
I did, because I did things with him that my dad did with me. And he used to teach me those things, and he made me read the dictionary every day and take a word out of it and be able to spell it and be able to articulate it and be able to use it in a sentence. This was not schoolwork. This was work that we did together as an African-American man growing up. He didn't want me to be a statistic, and he definitely didn't want me to be able to articulate only using profanity. He said, there's so many words that you can use to explain how you feel. Why would you just curse?
Exactly.
So that was his thing. So I grew up in this era, in this aura, so to speak, that everyone didn't grow up in it, but I grew up in it with empowerment. And my parents let me talk about my dreams, and they let me say what I wanted to say in the context of being respectable. And they let me get off my chest things that I was feeling with. So that laid the vulnerability foundation within me as a child.
Right. Which
that
you
I knew
thought was
okay.
normal. You thought this was normal. You figured everybody was doing
I figured everybody had their parents doing this to them. It's a good thing.
So what happened when you're like 16, 17, 18 years old in Chicago, right? In Illinois. And I think you said inner city as well.
Inner city, yeah.
What did that look like when you get out to really socialize with your peers?
It looked okay in the format of being a protective in the city. I know we look at the cities, and all cities have these blights and these areas right there. But I got into a pocket of being able to express myself with articulation, and it kind of kept me out of the vibes of the ghetto, the streets, the drugs, the gangs. And a lot of times, what I think most people that don't live in the city don't understand about the city. When you're in the city and it's gangs or whatever, if you're from that area, that neighborhood, if you good in sports, or if you a scholar, or you're kind of protected, you're insulated.
Protected and celebrated.
Yeah.
An advantage.
Yes, you do, because I never had to go. I mean, gangs was all around. My cousins was in gangs. Gangs was all around me, but I never was jumped by a gang. I never was in a gang fight. I never. They paid homage, so to speak, that, this one's probably going to make it out the neighborhood. Let's
And so
support
they
him.
protect you from ever
Mhm.
being in the gang. And if you thought
Absolutely.
about it, they would be first to probably.
Yeah, because I had a couple of them. I was like, man, I want to. They was like, look, Carl, you go over there, you study them books, you get out of here, and you do.
Yes.
And I had that kind of wall. So being vulnerable to me was a part of my life. It was a part
Right.
of sharing with those that love me and those that I grew up with. And it wasn't that. It wasn't until I became, I guess, when I got out of the military. I went in the military after high school because we didn't
Thank you for
have.
your service.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for your support. We didn't have money for me to jump right into college, and my mom was going to college. She was trying to get her degree and her CPA, so it was a lot going on. And I say the military was great. They came to the school, they talked to the juniors at that time. I was a junior, and they was like, "Oh, this is what we offer. This is what we do, and you can get school money for school." And once they said that, I was in.
Yeah.
But when I went through the military, everybody was the same, whether you was black or white or Asian or whatever. The
Yeah.
person that was over you said what to do, and everybody did it. So it
Right.
still was kind of like a padding of like how life really is compared to what I've experienced.
Right.
I really experienced my first bout, I could say racism when I got out the military and I got my first job. I got a job in the mailroom at Lockheed Martin
Mm-hmm.
at the Naval Yard in Philadelphia. And I was like 24, I think I was. And my auntie got me the job. She'd been working as an accountant for years, and she got me just, see, you start in the mailroom and you can work your way up.
Right.
And I got in the mailroom, and I was the only black in the mailroom with my two white bosses. One wasn't a boss, but one was the boss, and the other one treated me like he was the boss. And that's what I really saw, that being smart and being the way that I was offensive. It was offensive to people.
Mm.
That was the only time. That was the first time that I felt how I felt and how I was empowered in who I was
not
affected people.
right. Oh, I know that feeling.
And it was like, I was like, but I would say it in my mind. I would definitely never say it to them in conversation, but I said, I'm only here to help. I'm here to make better. I'm here to create more. I'm thinking of ways that you guys, I see you're not doing. You've
And
been here.
how this can be the best thing ever. Yeah, I can concur with those feelings.
Yes.
And questioning is sometimes in sadness. And that's the
Yes.
thing about the corporate world. And I say, and I look, I consider you an entre leader as well, where it's entrepreneurship, leadership in your sphere. And so you come into the work environment, into corporate space with an entrepreneurial mindset, but a servant leader perspective as well, where you're just here to make things better, help people be better, help systems be better. And here you are now, as you said, being sort of pushed out, pushed down because you have these innovative ideas and perspective and sort of eccentric way of viewing things. How did you deal with that challenge?
It was a challenge. It was a challenge that I knew God wouldn't allow me to continue to be in, right? Because of the simple fact he knew who I was, and he knew what I was going to be. I worked there, I don't think 7 or 8 months, and they had both went to lunch, and I like to tell this story because it brings about how change is made available to you if you just be persistent in who you are. Never give up on who you are, right? One of the big bosses that came in, and I didn't know this, I really know nobody beside those two, because we were in the mailroom, no one came down to the mailroom. But they both went out to lunch. It was one of their birthdays, and they both went out to lunch. So of course they said, "Yo, you stay here, don't touch nothing, don't do nothing, just man this, and we'll be back in an hour." So the package came in, they got delivered. And I seen what they done because I watched, I observed. I know how to do everything in there around them 30 times, but I just stayed in my lane. I watched what to do and I knew what to do. So that package came in and I just, thought about myself, I'm going to do this. I was thinking that I'm going to do this and show them, and then they'll open that door where, okay, he knows, right? So the naivety of that, but also the courage to do that as well, because that could have cost me my job.
Yeah.
I said, okay, I did it. So one of the big bosses, that come to find out, now I didn't know he was. He just came down asking for a package. But come to find out later, as the story goes, he was one of the main bosses in Lockheed Martin. I mean, like big time. So he saw me doing that, and he asked where the other guys was. I said it was so-and-so's birthday and they went and ate lunch and he said that they didn't invite you. I said, no, it's good. I said, I'm sitting here, man, in the ship, I'm just making sure not to catch on fire. So he chuckled. He said, all right, well, keep up the good work. And he left out. So I did the package and I did everything and I got it set and I took it to when I did the mail run to the different offices. So he got the package and it went up to wherever it was supposed to go. So I was like, oh, I did a good job. So they saw from the scanner that package came in and they were waiting to do that package, and it was a big to do, like, yo, having this package. I was like, oh man, I saw how you guys did it. I waited, I scaled it, I did everything. I set it up, I took it and sent it out. They was like, oh, what did you do? So they just made this big thing like I just totally was not going to have a job tomorrow. So I felt horrible. I did. I thought I, taking the initiative was going to get me fired. Right. And I felt more horrible because my aunt had stuck her neck out to give me this job. And I'm like, oh, I didn't just blew a lot for her.
Right.
And I worked a couple of days. I think that was like Tuesday or Wednesday of that week. I worked out the rest of that. And I was kind of like on pins and needles, I'll be honest with you, over the weekend. So when Monday came, I came in Monday. They used to get there at 6. I got there at 8. I came in Monday and they said, Frank was the gentleman. They said Frank had called, and I was like, well, who is Frank? I never heard this name. And he's like, Frank is the big boss. He said he wants to see you today. So, I'm relating that to the package and somebody that said, oh, they didn't snitched on me over the weekend. I had just created this whole thing, but I just
got a whole story.
I just got calm. I was like, God, whatever it is, it is. I know you got me. So they said, yeah, he wants to see you after lunch. So all morning I was like, this was on me, like weights. So I went to lunch, I came back and they said, okay, he's up on the 30th floor and he has the office with the marble doors. You got to go in. They describing this thing like I'm coming into the King's Palace. And it's like, you got to go there. His receptionist, he got his own personal receptionist. Her name is such and such. They just hyping this up and I'm just like, sweating the whole time. So I get up there and I go up there, to make a long story short, I go to the receptionist and I talk to her. And she said, okay, sit down. He wants to see you. So when he comes out, I automatically knew he was. He was the guy that came in the mail room. They came down and saw me. And he said, come on in. I was like, aren't you the gentleman? He's like, yeah, I am. He's like, come on in. But he didn't smile. It wasn't warming and inviting. It was sort of like I thought I was in trouble.
Cut and try. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. So he's like, no, have a seat. I want to talk to you. So I said, oh man, this can't be good because he's using stern. He's talking stern. He's like, remember that package that you were working on when I came in there? I said, yes, sir. He's like, that was for me. And he said, I was waiting for that because I needed it and it was something I was looking for. I said, wow. I got it and I put it and I did. I was trying to explain everything I did to make sure that he knew that I did. He said, but who told you to do that? And then I thought I was in more trouble because he said, well, who told you to do that? I said, I was kind of afraid to answer. I said, no one really. He said, well, how did you know to do that? I said, well, I watched them. I said, I've been here about 6 or 7 months. They never let me do anything. So I took it upon myself to learn what they did, watch everything that goes on in there. And I put it in my mental and I knew exactly what to do. I said, it came up to do that because they had went away and they gave me opportunity. So then he smiled. So I felt a little relieved. He smiled. He said, okay. He was like, well, what do you really want to do here? I said, the mailroom was my way in because my aunt gave me the job. And she told me about it. I say, but I'm a thinker. And I'm a thinker and I like to do things. And I say, preferably, I would like to be in a think tank. At this time, they had the think tank with the 7 or 8 minds of the workings behind this big vaulted door. And I knew about them, but it was, of course, no African Americans in that. It was like 7 or 8 white guys in there. And I said, I want to be in the think tank because I said, I think it's a lot of ways around here that we're not doing things that can be better. And he said, and he engaged me. He's like, well, like what? So he didn't know. I thought he was going to catch me off guard. I had 4 or 5 examples.
Oh,
and I said, like this, and this should be like this. And I just think this will go better like this. And I think we'll be more formal like this.
You were just fitting.
So I just ran to him. He was sitting there with his arms crossed and he was like grinning. He was like, you know what? He's like, you remind me of me. I said, oh, I do.
Wow. What a compliment.
But I'm thinking like this older white guy with gray hair. And how can I remind you? And he said,
See?
when I started here, I worked in the mailroom. And he said, I had two people in the mailroom just like you, and they didn't show me nothing. He said,
Wow.
but I wasted time. He said, because I didn't have the courage enough to do things that I knew how to do.
Wow.
I let them tell me. And he said, it cost me 7 years before I got on my path.
And if I had to go move up.
Yep. So he said, you did that in 7 months. And he said, I'm inspired by that. He said, because you didn't let them keep you all that time down there, knowing what you know and not move forward. And I almost came to tears. I'm
Wow.
serious, Dr. Alisa. I almost did. And he said, I see you and me. He said, don't worry about the color. He said, the spirit. He said, I see you and the spirit.
Wow.
You have the spirit. He said, I tell you what. He said, work the rest of this week down there. He said, I'm gonna make some calls and I'm gonna get your security badges and all of that. And he said, next Monday, you're gonna start a think tank. And he said, I'm gonna go in there and introduce you. And he said, don't let them scare you.
Yeah.
He's like, because you're not gonna look like them, and they're gonna be pressuring you, and they're gonna be like, how you getting here? You didn't go here, you didn't go there.
Right.
He's like, if they give you any problems, come to me. And from that point, I knew that being me, it could pay off.
Anytime. Oh,
Anytime.
I love that.
Yeah,
And so you just sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
No, I'm just saying from that point on, the vulnerability that I built, that was built from that foundation, it let me know that that was the right thing, regardless of however long it took to manifest. Right. However long I had to run into the right person, being that way was going to pay off for Carl.
Exactly. And I feel it would pay off. So I have this quote somewhere out there that I wrote years ago, that vulnerability, being vulnerable, opens up the door, bust open the door to authenticity, which connects you to your, I would say, the highest version of yourself, where you're so at peace and at one with you that you can't do anything else but win. Because now in that space of vulnerability, authenticity, you're more empowered to explore what your gifts, talents, abilities are, and then train them in routines and habits that will serve not just your highest good, but anywhere you show up. And this is the exemplification of that. You show that, because had you not been, first of all, comfortable with who you are as a person and the gift and talents you had, those guys would have shut you down long time ago, probably even had you leave the job. And in the moment of fear, you could have froze up and not give him those 5 examples of how you can effectively change. But just you showing up, this man is literally saying, you don't look like us that are in the think tank, but you belong there. And so for our friends that are listening who may think for one reason or the other, you might not be Afro descent or African American at all. You might just be Asian American or Asian, wherever. You might just be an oddball in just how you think. You being 100% vulnerable and authentic is going to benefit you, is what Carl's telling us. And so the question I have for you is, this may have changed the trajectory of your life. Tell us a little bit more about how that pivot just changed everything for you.
It emboldened me. It empowered me. It made me go back to the roots, which is what we lose a lot, right? The foundation that we have from our parents and our grandparents, and the foundation that they laid. No, we take it for granted because they have to do that as parents. But there are nuggets, and I don't care who's your mom and dad, and I don't care who's your descendants.
Come on now.
There are nuggets that are passed down, but you must grab them.
Right.
A lot of times we don't want to sit at the feet of the elders because we think we know more. And only saying that is not so much as the elders, but those that went before you. There are things that you can take from them, so those mistakes you don't have to make. And I think we miss that part of it. We're so gung-ho with trying to do it our way.
Reinvent the wheel.
Absolutely. The wheel has been the same since it was invented. It's only been made to do more things. It's only been made to be more populated by what it actually draws and pulls. But the wheel, the dynamic of the wheel, the circle and the spokes has not changed. And a lot of times we do that in our life. We think that if we get in this area, or we move to this city, or we work in this field, we're going to make changes. The change starts within you, because you carry you wherever you go.
That's right.
So if it's not down with you or you're not strong in you, I don't care what they put before you or
That's
give
right.
to you, you're going to squander, you're going to
Mhm.
waste, and you're not going to build.
That's right. $1 million, $1 billion.
It
If that,
doesn't
and this
matter.
is why we focus on mindset so much, because
Absolutely.
mindset doesn't, it's developed with resources that are outside of you, but it's still an innate thing that's developed, grown, and nurtured, and no one can take that away from you. The setting of the mind is up to you. Everything can come at you, but what you do with what comes at you is the setting of the mind. And so I just absolutely appreciate you sharing that story with us. I have a question for you when it comes to the individuals that you've coach, because obviously in your industry, vulnerability in law, in the legal profession, is viewed as a weakness. And so your industry that you stem from when it comes to law, it's a strength, for you to be, what should I say? I call it shady. But protective of your true thoughts and emotions. I mean, it's so hard to get around an attorney to get a straight answer. And they've developed that skill. And so just to even be vulnerable would be hard for most, right? But you argue the opposite. You say that vulnerability is actually a strength in leadership and even in law. Can you share how this perspective and what truly is your perspective, I would say, first of all, on vulnerability? And then if you can give us some example of how it has shaped the work of the people you impact and coach.
Yeah, what I tell people and what we all need to know, right? Especially in this world of social media, how you can be so misguided
Mm-hmm.
and shown so many things of which you don't know what is real and what is not. The only thing that you can tell is real is you if you stay true to you.
Ooh.
We are the only thing that could be real. And when I say that, people may not get it, but I'll say it again. We, as the person that we individually are, is the only thing that can be real. If we
Mm.
stand on who we are, all other avenues of what you see will only be real. See, we're
Mm.
all trying to, and I'll say placate. A lot of people are trying to placate to others, trying to be like others, not strong in
Right.
who they are, not
Right.
empowered in who they are, don't want to be in the race they're in. Like it's just so many ways that the people are looking to get out
Yes.
of the body they were born in.
Come on. Oh
So
my gosh.
I flipped the script to say I'm empowered in the body I was born in because I'm one of however many millions or billions of people. There's no other
Right.
Carl. Would someone
Come
share
on.
my name? Absolutely, they could.
But there's
But
no
that's
other part.
it.
Yes.
That's it. That's all that we share. And when we realize that we are
Yes.
individually
Yes.
unique, even in groups, even in corporations, even in
Exactly.
leadership, we're individually unique. When we find that power, then we'll start answering some real true questions that we've been circling around for years,
Yes.
hundreds of years. We've been circling around it. And no, I'm not the genius in the room. I'm just empowered by who I am. If
Right.
everybody get like that, can you imagine how many light bulbs will be bright?
Come on. There's too many bulbs that are not even turned on yet.
They're not. They're not. It's a lot of people living in the dark. They don't even know what they can be. They don't even
Yes.
know what they should be. Someone has told them who they are.
Yes.
Like those are the kind of things that I really empower and coach and lead with. I'm not here to teach no attorney the law.
Oh, they already know that. That's
I
out
tell
there.
them that, yes, I tell them that. I say I'm not even trying to teach attorneys soft skills. When I first started, I was like, yeah, I'm teaching soft skills. I used that and I was like, I'm throwing it out the window. I'm
Yes.
not trying to teach you anything. I'm trying to show you how you are.
Yes.
And in the essence of showing you that, how you can see you are being more empowered by who you truly are.
Exactly.
Get down to that. So showing that and talking to that and attorneys and getting them to see that, I think I bring down the guard because for in law and dealing with lawyers and in the context of law, when a lawyer or law talks about a law firm talks about embracing vulnerability and those kind of things is often characteristics or even characterized by just this, I'm showing a weakness.
Right.
So I flip the script of what that means. I don't go to the dictionary definition of that. I go to situational. What does vulnerability mean to you? And on all assets of how we say vulnerability, vulnerability don't always put us in the spot where harm and danger is there.
Oh no.
It's not. So the dictionary does this service to that word.
What is
But
well, how do you what is the what is the juxtaposition in those two? What you define it as and what they define it as?
I define it as power because it's real.
Mm-hmm.
Vulnerability is real. Vulnerability is not saying I'm going to act tough because the situation is tough and I don't want nobody to see that I'm struggling.
Right.
See, that I put it in a situation for you. You're not going to ask for help because you got too much pride and the situation is drowning you.
Come on.
Say, okay, when I'm vulnerable, it don't have nothing to do with who I am.
Nope.
It's that I see what I'm in, I need help with.
Right. And
that's all
acknowledging, yes, you're acknowledging your need.
Absolutely.
To pivot in that situation, which
because it's not about feeling. And we've attached vulnerability to a feeling. That's why everybody's scared of it.
So vulnerability is an action.
It's action.
It's a verb. It's also, I would go further to say it's a choice that you make momentarily in the moment by moment. Because a lot of people say, well, she's a very vulnerable person. I'm like, I don't know if I want to call someone a vulnerable person, but I get what people are trying to do. But even so, we would love for our listeners and viewers, I believe, from your definition, is I can sit here in this moment and choose to figure out what it is. Yes, I might be feeling, but the why behind the feeling is what you need. And because I might be feeling scared, I can choose to be vulnerable and say, hey, you know what, Carl, I'm threatened, scared about this interview today. And I'm going to need you to help me.
Absolutely.
I'm going to need you to help me. Like, I don't know if I have what it takes for this. This is my first time I'm being on a podcast. And now I open up the gateway for you to help me in this journey. I did acknowledge that feeling. I understood where I was and I know what I needed to ask for. Maybe I don't know what I need, but I know I figured out to articulate there is a need, which is not a weakness, but a place of strength from what your definition is, that I am using the strength to ask. It's so much more strength to say, I need this, especially from someone you don't have a rapport in a relationship with. I remember. Go ahead.
No, I was just to tag on that because you're really on a great trajectory with that. It's the strength is what the term or that I know I didn't start it, but I used it a lot in social media in the beginning. I still do. Vulnerability is strength, and I would often get asked that. I mostly start a lot of my posts and messages with that hashtag at the top. And it's because to be vulnerable is strength. It takes strength to do that. A lot of people want to talk about courage.
Right.
And it takes courage to do that. But courage is only the outside word of strength. Because if you don't have the strength, you won't be courageous.
Strength is in it. Yeah.
So if you don't have the strength,
you can't be courageous without. Oh, I love that.
You can't be courageous without the strength. So that's why vulnerability is the strength. Well, vulnerability and it's so much that it does. Vulnerability, it humanizes us. It allows us to connect with people on levels that we never thought we could. It allows us to see that, grew up this way, but you grew up that way too. And look, we don't look nothing alike. It allows us to have conversations that draw understanding and not ridicule. It allows us to be in places of understanding the mind of people instead of the action of people. It just draws so much. It drives personal growth. When I'm vulnerable about something that is hindering my growth, I get help for that to grow.
Yes.
Almost like somebody planted a seed and it was like, oh, man, I planted those seeds, but I ain't going to water.
Come on.
Yeah, I got a whole garden.
No one does that.
Yeah, so you got a whole garden and you mean to tell me you didn't water the garden? How you expect it to grow? Vulnerability is our opportunity to water those imperfections that we have so we can either get the courage to live with them or we can get the courage to alter them. And through that comes the strength. So vulnerability is strength.
It is strength. It has to be. And the more I think about it, because that is so do you believe that there is a language of vulnerability?
Yes.
What would that look like if we were supposed to call it that?
if we call it the language, and it's so funny now, but it's not funny. I can pick up when things aren't with people. Right. I know spiritual people call it discernment. Some people, women call it sometimes intuition. Everyone probably had their minute name for it, right?
Yeah.
I could be in a conversation with someone talking about something, and I can just look at them when I'm articulating what I am, how that's hit something that they really need to share, but they're covering. And it's a God gift, most definitely, just like all of these are intuitions.
Because you're tapped in, yeah.
I'm not no soothsayer or magic person or doing those kind of things. It's just that I'm in alignment with who I am, so I can see when you're uncomfortable within you are.
Come on, it's the frequency, right? The frequency is you're able to see. You're in that other. And again, all of us have that. It's if you're tapping into it or not.
And it's a thing because people say, "Well, how do you talk about this? Or how do you make this? Or how do you?" Because I've lived it first and foremost. A lot of times we talk about things that we haven't lived, so therefore there's no power in what we talk about.
Right.
We talk about things that someone else told us and we haven't experienced, so our experience doesn't denote that we know about it.
Right. Exactly.
And you can only be empowered, and the only person receives something from you when they know that you've experienced it.
Yourself.
Right? Exactly. When you experience it, there's a greater authority in you talking about it.
Come on now.
How can I be an alcoholic and I cannot be talking to an alcoholic, telling them what it is to not do it, and I've never been one myself. Now, educationally wise, smart wise, books wise,
yeah, you can give it. But
of course, I can give it to you.
Not
but
the
if
same.
I know in that feeling when you feeling the unction for wanting to go drink because I felt that unction, I can tell you what not to do in that unction.
Very differently, and you'll use all the science but your words will be so pure and authentic
to the person that's needing it.
Yes. And that is the one thing I remember. I talk about this in Dr. Kareem's speaking program, which I'm a part of as well. And I share with them that you can go back a few years ago and you look at my social media, and I was teaching, talking about purpose. And of course, I'm very passionate about it, but I was not vulnerable. And I would tell you, I failed to connect. I came over more as a lecturer and a professor because I was using my intellectual base knowledge to present. Now you guys listen to me on the podcast or wherever you hear me give a speech. I don't care who's in the audience. I'm going to give you the best, most authentic, vulnerable version of me. So I sit here and I tell you that there are times when vulnerability sucked so much in my journey and I didn't know that's what it was. I identified it as being inauthentic, but it kind of goes, a lack of vulnerability does breed inauthenticity as much as the more vulnerable you become, it breeds authenticity, right? And that's Brene Brown plays a back and forth. And again, like I said, I think I read one of her books. I think it's Daring Greatly, but I haven't never really fed on her content. I just call her the vulnerability lady. And that's it. I'm in my own bubble because
I am too. I didn't even know. I found out about her during the pandemic. And someone that I was talking to someone I had just came on. I didn't even have a social media before the pandemic. I had none. Only thing I had LinkedIn since 2008, and I had no other social media. No Facebook, no nothing, because I always looked at it as a point of just bashing or negativity. Or I knew there were people on there. Don't get me wrong. I knew people were on there.
Doing good work.
That was going to work, but I just thought that I would do good work with the people I come across. And I would, I just did that because I'm like,
felt like it was also where you were more comfortable and you felt like it was most impactful.
It was more in my skin to come and talk to you and have a conversation. I did a lot of Zooms with people in the beginning I built my network on LinkedIn in the beginning of that. I went over, when I first was about the pandemic, between the last 4 or 5 years, I built up over 20-some thousand people on LinkedIn. And a lot of that came from nurturing relationships, doing interviews with people, talking different points with people, Zooms with people like we're doing now, on shows, podcasts with people. That formulated my thought processes to continue on. And in doing that, I understood that being vulnerable was action. It was something that you needed to take. It wasn't nothing that was taken from you.
Right.
And your vulnerability is like a yo-yo. You can put it out there and bring it back whenever you want to.
Exactly.
It's not a state of being.
No, it's not.
It's not like, oh, like you were saying, oh, I'm a
That's
vulnerable person and that's how I am all my life. No.
it's not even possible. Because there's absolute moments when choosing to be vulnerable is not the choice you need to make, because you're in a situation with another human or character or group where vulnerability will be exploited. And I don't want anyone walking away and say, well, Dr. Alisa and Mr. Carl Shawn Watkins said, oh, I have to be vulnerable all the time. We're saying that a state of mind, this is why we're on Mindset Mastery talking about vulnerability, having a state of mind to choose vulnerability and using the language of vulnerability and expressing it, it is a strength, and it will empower your journey as a person and ultimately, as a leader. That's what we're saying. And so it is a momentary choice, but with all things, you can use and abuse things. Because I will say this, I bet a lot of people on social media putting all their business out there every day, who they're mad at, who is not paying child support, who's their political leader of choice. I bet they think they're being very vulnerable. But I'll say, you just thinking up the place with a lot of that extra stuff. And you're honestly putting yourself at risk, because, when I see, for example, I'll use this because this happens a lot on my feed, women literally just bashing their ex. And I'm like, okay, so you might be information sharing, but the next guy who's on your timeline that could be possibly interested in you is looking at, well, if she treat him like that, what she's going to do with me? That's where you supposedly being an information sharer is not being vulnerable. And that's not beneficial to you. Now, when you do meet that partner that has earned the right to access to the intimate pieces of your heart, and I say earned the right because that doesn't happen on day 1, day 2, day 3. That's over time, you release levels of information in vulnerability to nurture and empower that relationship and that bond. And again, we're going from a relational space. For example, in the corporate space, I have young people or individuals that I'm coaching every day and getting ready for the work history. And I have to teach them how to be vulnerable and articulate being authentic, honest, but not be over here telling them, well, I don't have a car and I need my brother-in-law is driving me. You don't have to say that. The only thing that employer needs to know is that you're going to get there on time. You're going to show up every day. If you tell them something else and make your travel and your arrival to on time and every day shaky, they're going to flip the script on you and probably not offer you the job, or at least move you down to the pile, no matter how great a candidate you are, because it's not their space to determine to help you with transportation. That's on you. So while you're figuring it out, you keep that information to yourself. But if they ask you what your strengths and weaknesses are, again, another question, you can be vulnerable. That's the exact time when you're vulnerable and say, you know what, I used to be a person that just would take longer on everything because I was overthinking it. And I might be, or I get things done on time, but I'm that person that will more than likely have a couple follow-up questions for my supervisor or leader. You're being vulnerable and also telling them what you need, but now they know that you're the type of person that produces quality. Because if you try to tell them that you don't need any help, they're not going to trust you. So there's this whole world, and a lot of people try to address it, and there's no way we can address all these aspects inside of this one episode. And you obviously will be back and you're going to have a masterclass inside MM360 teaching us the principles of your methodology of how you approach vulnerability and leadership. But the question I wanted to pivot to really quick before we take a break and come back to flip the script is, if you can tell us what you would say vulnerability looks like in everyday life for an individual, and then sort of show us how that makes sense in your leadership role. We would love that.
Yes, I just say vulnerability to me equates or equals to honesty.
Mm-hmm.
Right? How can I be honest about A, what I'm feeling, B, what I'm doing, C, who I'm interacting with, and of course D, it should be reversed, but I say D, who am I leading? I have to be honest with them and understanding who it is, what it is, and what I need to do. So looking at that from that perspective, I throw my calls to action into place there. How do I foster this dialogue? How am I able to articulate with an honesty that they get it and not look at me from a different area or a different arena? How do I model this vulnerability? As a leader, it's okay to show vulnerability and admit challenges, but in admitting those challenges, you have to put in the challenges what was derived from them. No one wants to hear about someone that's always in a vulnerable state. Like I said before, it's not a mindset. It's not a mindset, and it's not a state of mind. But when you character that vulnerability within you, put it to the place of where there's an outcome that needs to be fostered among them that you're sharing with. Let them know about the process and what was learned and what was gained through that, and how from that it's been more impactful to how you do things going forward. Encourage the people to take risks. Risk is a lot of things that hold people back in essence of vulnerability. Mm-hmm. They have ideas. They know ways to do things differently, or they know ways to enhance how you're currently doing things. And they sit on it because for the fear of someone may take the idea. Mm-hmm. Someone can always steal your idea. Let me say this to those out there, and this is for leaders as well. Someone can always steal your idea, but your idea cannot be performed by anyone else.
Wow.
So don't get it twisted. Can someone go in the boardroom or the conference room and you were talking to your neighbor or your QB buddy and you told them some things that will make things better, and they got in the conference room in front of everybody and said, yeah, I was thinking of this, that, and that. Don't be dissuaded by that, because they didn't do nothing but steal your words. They're not able to operate in it because it's yours. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing that I really would tell people, that what it looks like from day to day. Don't be ashamed of continuing to tell Bobby something and Bobby uses it. Eventually it's going to come to naught. That wasn't Bobby's idea. Bobby can't formulate it and Bobby can't perform it. Ooh. So let him tell the boss, yeah, I thought if we do this, this, and that. And the boss will say, that sounds awesome, Bobby. How do we do that?
There goes Bobby.
There goes Bob. See, and then that's your opportunity. I've curated a lot of things for that. People take stuff from me all the time, and I don't even matter. It doesn't matter to me anymore. And see, God give me so much. What I give you, I call it a gift. Right. God, He gives me so much stuff up here that I can share stuff with you, and you can hold it 10 years and still not know how to manifest it.
Come on now.
Because it's mine.
It's with you. Yeah.
So it's just, you have to think about that. And that's not arrogance for those who are listening. No. I just want you to understand.
It's confidence. I call it confidence.
Yes. It's like cologne. It's confidence. Deion Sanders have a quote that he said he walked past someone and they said, man, what's that you wearing? Man, it smells and looks good. He said it's confidence. So the guy thought he was going to say a cologne that he was wearing. He said, no, it's confidence. Or something. He said, that's what you smelling. He said, that's what it is. He said,
it really is. Because when people experience that energetic frequency that is just positivity, authenticity, and confidence, they don't know what it is. So they start to look on the physical. Well, it must be that nice watch and his gear, how he's dressed or whatever. And it really isn't. And so I've found, again, like you said, in my journey, I guess now I start to say I've been blessed, in the corporate space or else, to experience a lot of pushing down, push over, look over, and sometimes flat out envy and hatred with articulation. I mean, I had someone literally told me that they hated me in the corporate sphere, and somebody would be like, oh my God, why would someone hate you? The cologne of confidence, the cologne of having a wealth that I've allowed myself to tap into, because I believe I've allowed myself to tap into because I believe it's in every human. If you are breathing, you are a wealth, a fountain of innovation, of growth and abundance that you choose if you want to tap into it or not. So I have allowed myself to tap into and also allow myself to be a vehicle and a facilitator of these things. And so what do you choose? And so because of that, I have been blessed to experience rejection at all levels. And once I understood, and I call it my Godfidence, I may, just as any human in being vulnerable, say I would have hurt, I would have cried, and I would have even been sad for a very short period of time as I get older. but I was never disabled. There's not even a disable button to push. Good luck trying. We've seen it, and so we're at a place where it's like, okay, if I'm not for you, fine. You've got all these other 8,900,000 something people on the planet. That it's not a shot. Okay, so I love that. So we'll be right back after a quick break, where Carl Shawn is going to get into a little bit more about vulnerability in his own life and his own career. We'll be right back after these messages.
Thank you for joining us for this powerful episode of Mindset Mastery Moments with Dr. Alisa Whyte and her guest, Carl Shawn Watkins. In today's conversation, we explored how vulnerability can transform leadership and the unique insights Carl has gained through his journey in the legal field. If this episode inspired you, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others who might benefit from Carl's message of resilience and growth. Stay tuned for part 2, where Dr. Alisa and Carl dive even deeper into Carl's leadership philosophy, the wisdom of intergenerational connections, and the impact of building supportive communities. Until then, keep mastering your mindset, and we'll see you in part 2.